Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and today I want to ask, are wargaming blogs dying out? So I've been a blogger myself, wargame blogger, for over 13 years. Initially my blog was mostly focused on the games I was playing at the time, which was RPGs, and on painting and the occasional war game. And obviously over time, as the games I played had changed, and as I joined the rejects and got more wargaming in, my blog has become more about my wargaming habit, about the things that I want to paint and play, and the things that infuse me. And my miniature adventures is what it's all about, the little places that I visit and the things that I do that make up my version of the hobby. And at one point, I followed lots of other blogs. I still do follow lots of other blogs, but at one point I had over 600 other blogs, wargaming blogs, in my blog roll. And I can't admit to having read every single article, but I would regularly scroll through them, look and pick out the ones that I wanted to read, and some regular ones that I would go back to time and again. But over the last few years, one by one, these have stopped being used. So on the blog roll that I use, it can tell you when how many have been inactive for 6 months or a year, and bit by bit they've ended up closing down or just not being updated. And now I would say that last check, the number of active blogs out of that original 600 plus that are still going is probably under 200. And although I do occasionally add new wargaming blogs to that, I'm not nearly adding them as fast as they're coming off. And so of course it begs the question, are wargaming blogs dying out? Have they had their day? Is the format old hat? And has it been overtaken by things like Facebook groups, YouTube, Instagram and the like? So back in the mists of time, blogs were all the rage. And as usual, I was a late adopter. I joined my peers in the blogosphere in 2009. And as I said, initially I focused on miniatures painting and RPGs. And then it settled into anything that was hobby related, as I mentioned, my miniature adventures. And my primary focus now has sort of shifted to my YouTube channel, but I still keep the blog going because there's a lot of overlap, I think. There's a bigger audience for me in YouTube, I feel, hence these videos, and a lot more interaction in the comments than I get on my blog. But I wouldn't dream of stopping my blog because there's still a lot of things I can do. It's a great platform to launch readers towards this channel. It's a place where I can put extra content to support videos that I've done, particularly if I'm doing a game report or something like that. I can put a lot more stuff on my blog for people to see. And after 13 years, there's a huge back catalogue of articles and pictures that are on there that people still refer to. I've got posts going back almost to the beginning of when I started blogging that are still regularly read and reviewed. So I wouldn't want to sort of take them out of the blogosphere, if you like. And occasionally I do still write standalone articles for the blog that have nothing linked to the YouTube channel. So there's still a role for my blog, even though my emphasis might have shifted a little bit. So to try and answer my initial question, are blogs dying out? Yes and no is the annoyingly vague answer. A quick search online and you get some interesting data. Some of it is slightly out of date, a couple of years old, but there are approximately 600 million blogs still active worldwide. In the US alone, there are over 32 million bloggers, which is a massive number. And obviously most of them are commercial blogs associated with companies or products, but there's also a significant portion are non-commercial hobby blogs, for want of a better phrase, and and of course a small niche of those are wargamers. But there has been a shift in formats. I think we've all noticed it. If you go on Google Trends, for instance, a great way of looking at interesting things, there is a steady decline in interest since 2009 in blogging. Certainly in the amount of people looking that up. However, and at the same time, a corresponding increase in the number of people using YouTube, for instance. and certainly YouTube channels have grown from around 15 million channels in 2017 to nearly 37 million channels now. Obviously most of them are not to do with wargaming, but this is indicative of the sort of trends we see between blogging and vlogging. But blogs are still by far the most popular medium. They far outstrip YouTube channels, even though it may seem counterintuitive. It may feel that YouTube has the lion's share of the audience, but it doesn't. Blogs still, by a long gap, dominate our interest and our readership, if you like. But what about wargaming blogs? Well, that's a bit harder to measure. The data is perhaps more empirical, based on observation rather than hard and fast information. You know, Google Trends isn't very good for looking up that sort of information. And as mentioned in the intro, you know, out of the 600 blogs that I used to follow, there's now less than 200 in my blog roll. And I say I do still add to my blog roll, but more come off than go on. So empirically, I would say that wargaming blogs seem to be dying out a bit, but not completely. And you know, I have to appreciate, I think we should all appreciate, writing a blog is a long-term commitment. It takes a lot of effort. And of course there's lots of newer alternative social media formats out there that are always, you know, soliciting for our attention all the time. Facebook groups in particular seem to have boomed in the last few years. I mean, the format was introduced in about 2010, so it's not exactly new, but it has certainly been given more emphasis in recent years, and there's been a proliferation in wargame related groups on Facebook. The format is simple, instant, more easily consumed. It's not as labour intensive as curating your own blog, and the content can be very diverse within a certain set of parameters for those groups. So therefore it appeals to a wider audience. There are a few downsides to such collaborative efforts. However, the main one, for me anyway, is that loss of singular vision that you get from a blog that is written by an individual or a group of individuals. That personalisation is lacking in groups which are by definition much more diverse. So do blogs have a future? Well, as a long-time blogger, I'm bound to say yes. And despite the apparent reduction in interest in blogging, based on what says in Google Trends, my readership seems to have remained fairly steady over the last few years. You know, hobby blogs are about providing an outlet for your voice to engage with an audience on an individual level. And they remain a great way to record and develop your skills, and to share it to people who are very like-minded. They enable in-depth articles and discussion in a way that I think gets drowned out a little bit in more social mediums. And clearly the readers of blogs agree, because WordPress did a review of not so long ago, and it said it logged over 20 billion blog page views every month. So that's a huge interest in people going to blogs for information. So they remain a hugely popular medium. So next week I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do to keep our blogs relevant for the future. A few ideas and thoughts. I'll talk about that a bit more next week. But in the meantime, I just wanted to ask you, what about you? Have you ever had a blog? And if so, is it still going? Do you follow other wargaming blogs? And if so, have you seen the same decline that I have in the number of them available? Have you been lured away by Facebook, Instagram, or in some other social media format? I'd love to hear, as always, what your experience has been, you know, obviously from the perspective of us wargamers wanting to share our content. So if you enjoyed the video, as always, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content, please click the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.